Good evening. I'd like to call the Haverford Township Planning Commission meeting to order. It is Thursday, February 13th. Will we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. For roll call, I will just note that all Planning Commission members are present. The first item on our agenda is 800 Coopertown Road, the Coopertown Elementary Preliminary Final Land Development Plan. We can have the representative from the applicant introduce your plan, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ryan Schuster. I'm here with K&W Engineers on behalf of Haverford Township School District. We are the civil engineers on this project. Let me flip to our in here.
You want to do the renderings first to give them perspective?
Sure. Yeah, we can go through the renderings.
Good evening, everyone. Ken Matthews, owner's representative for the school district. We figured we'd just give you just a few quick renderings so you get some perspective, and then obviously Ryan will go through the details of the plan, the site plan itself. So basically, the school district, similar to Chatham when we were here last year, the building, they have modulars outside that are in this area over here. They want to get them inside and just right size the building for their program. So you have two 7,000 plus or minus additions off the back here. And then there'll be another addition out of the front. And then we're going to repurpose things like the music or the existing auditorium, reconfigure some of the interior of the building. So really, the rest of the building on the inside stays the same other than being reconfigured. So this is from the front. This is the front addition here, you can see. And you'll see on the site plan, this is where we have to relocate some of the sanitary around the building, some of the existing storm around the building here. This is a perspective, basically the same side. We're cutting in these windows into the existing auditorium, which becomes the library. It's another perspective. This is the existing loading dock, just adding a rolling grill door here, for ease of bringing in materials. So really not much changes with the parking lot. Again, Ryan will go through the details of that. This is a perspective looking at the new rear one-story addition from Coopertown Road. There's the existing gym on the right. Just another perspective of the second addition that's on the left-hand side. Just, trying to create some outdoor teaching spaces. Just an interior perspective, it's kind of got to be like Linwood and Chatham Park. New library, new cafeteria. And that's kind of the new lobby. So just wanted to give a little perspective there so you could see the renderings that were done.
All right, now coming to the site plan, I will switch to the existing conditions here first. Like Ken mentioned, one of the items for the building additions is to remove the modular classrooms. So the modulars that you see where my cursor is, these will be removed, and the proposed building additions will be located. The lobby will be here to the north, and the two building additions for the classrooms will be to the south. There will also be a new hard surface play area to the right of the building, as well as improvements to the front courtyard and a new drive connection to Coopertown Road. There will also be some parking improvements. You can see we have some ADA spaces that we're installing, as well as some additional spaces at the north parking lot. For stormwater, there will be one subsurface facility planned south, right south of the two building additions. That'll just be subsurface, like I mentioned, infiltration. So the majority of the new impervious areas will be handled by that subsurface facility. In regards to permitting, We have already submitted this to the MPDS general permit to the Conservation District. This is about 4.5 acres of limits of disturbance. There will also be an HOP permit for PennDOT, one for the driveway connection that we have here, as well as some utility lines that we're connecting within Coopertown. We have already made this submission to the Shade Tree Commission, have received comments, and have already resubmitted those revised plans to the shade tree. We have made this land development submission at the beginning of January and have a review letter that we are in the middle of addressing. So after the discussion tonight, we'll finish addressing that and make our resubmission. I'm be more than happy to run through any comments if anyone would like to, but the review letter seems minor enough in nature that we can make all of our revisions, and then we'll get these plans in your hands as soon as we can. So is there any questions on the site plan itself or any of the comments that you would like me to go into further? Let me go back to the site plan.
Planning Commission, does anyone have comments?
Yeah, a couple of general comments or questions. One little one at Coopertown and another one on the way next year, so I don't know, it's of interest. Is the new bus lane, is that going to kind of supplement the existing bus lane, or is the intent to replace it, or?
So the three driveways up here are going to remain. Ken can speak more to the actual functionality of it, but the buses will be for, here, I can just let you.
So as you know now, in the morning, it's kind of a mess because you have the buses and the cars all up front. So the idea is to separate it, similar to Linwood, similar to Chatham. So the idea is in the morning, the bus drop-off stays over here. This long line, because you know there's obviously many, many cars that are dropping off, that will stay. So that really keeps that separated. You have a nice entrance here. We're adding a walkway along Coopertown Road, so all the walkers that come out of these neighborhoods are able to go down and not just cut across the grass, walk down, come into this entrance as well. So it keeps that separated nicely. In the afternoon, the buses will line up in the front as they do now, because parents, you can't pull in to pick up, as you know. So parents park throughout the neighborhoods, they'll walk, come pick their children up, and then the buses will load as they normally do in the front. So really overall, as Ryan said, the two existing entrances stay. This existing parking lot entrance has to get widened just a little bit, now with the buses turning in. So it really nicely separates everything. So it felt like it was a good solution especially to the morning rush.
Is there like a minimum width that the buses, when they pull through to go back to Coopertown, to drive through that existing parking lot? I know it's a little tight at the moment.
You mean minimum width for the one-way, them coming in here?
Yeah, like driving through the parking lot with
What's that
cars
drive
parked
on?
there.
Ryan? Should be 24 feet.
Minimum. We do have, especially for the PennDOT submission, all the adequate truck turning templates to ensure that those vehicles can make the turns as needed. But yeah, we'll have the minimum width for that drive aisle.
General question, what is necessitating the expansions? What is the purpose of these expansions broadly?
As I mentioned, so a number of things. They're inside the building, they're in undersized spaces that aren't right-sized, so just that by itself. You have two modular trailers outside, so that's two classrooms that are now being folded inside the building. So just that alone, all the special education needs, various language classes, et cetera, when you program the space, this is what drives the need. Same as Chatham, and similar to Linwood.
And this is increased enrollment as well?
No, there's enrollment is staying flat. They're a little under 500 students, so there's no projected increase in students or the student population.
Thanks. Thank you.
No problem.
A quick question. Can you go back to your rendered floor plan that you showed originally? And I just more curiosity into the new hard play area. If you could even zoom in on that area.
Oh, the new hard play area. I don't think we,
Oh, okay.
sorry, that's not on the,
That's not on. I
no,
guess
you
what
can't really see it here, but it's on the plan.
Okay. My only comment for consideration might be to consider exactly what that landscaping is between the bus loading and the hard play area, and and having some sort of vertical landscape separation between the two. You guys might not be there yet, but
We actually are. We've already.
You are?
That's
Okay.
being addressed. I think that's part of the resubmission to the shade tree. That was pulled down. And actually, at least 2, maybe 3 very large oaks are being placed within the play area for additional shade, and at least 1 or 2 on the outside.
perfect. Thank you guys very much.
Just one question. Looking at the area where the temporary units were, it looks like the grading there needs to be finalized.
I'm sorry, you said which area was
Where
it?
Where the temporary classroom units were,
Oops.
C-104. Just take a look at the grading in that area and clean it up a little bit. It looks like some of the contours might be missing or
Okay.
incomplete, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't, it's not letting me pan down there, but you're referring to this area down, all these proposed
Where the
contours.
existing modulars were.
Where the modulars were.
Yeah, making sure that it drains out
Oh,
properly.
yes, yeah, okay, yeah, some of the existing contours are cut off due
Yeah.
to it, yeah. So we'll fill those in with proposed.
And there's a
contour
door
lines.
in that back corner there that requires that ground to be so high.
Yes, in this corner. Yeah.
Yep.
There's an exit door right here in the corner.
Okay. So you go out, go down the hill.
Yeah, it goes flat across. There's a sidewalk that goes around the back, and then then it
Okay.
drops down 4 or 5 feet, whatever it is, to the
Alright.
baseball field.
Yeah, just clean that up.
Yeah, of course.
So in your letter, you note a couple of waiver requests. 2 of them related to loading zones, off-street loading zones. So the first was from section 182-708.A1, requiring off-street loading and unloading spaces with proper and safe access from a street be provided. And then the other one requiring that no loading space be permitted within the required front yard setback. Can you point out the areas that would qualify within those waivers and what the intent of the waivers are, or waiver requests?
So as part of this project, there are enhancements being made to the existing loading dock. And if you can see this dashed line, that is the existing loading area. And that is going to remain the same loading area in the proposed conditions. So because that's their existing, where they're already bringing in their loading, the reason for the waiver is because we're not changing the way the loading dock functions. The proposed will stay the same as existing, so,
And where's your front yard setback?
front yard, let me go to this.
Yeah, it cuts through the edge of it there.
Right here, if you can follow my cursor, there's these 3 dashes,
Okay,
and it cuts right through the top of that loading area.
okay. So just a small portion of the loading area, of the existing loading areas within the front yard setback, hence the waiver request?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I wanted just to touch on some of the sidewalks. So there's sidewalk currently on Highland Lane. And remind me, there is or is not sidewalks on Coopertown currently? No
No,
sidewalks?
no
There is
sidewalks.
not.
But you're proposing a walking path of some kind?
A
Yes.
concrete walkway all the way down from the corner at Highland, all the way, 1,200 feet, whatever it is, down to the corner of Meadows Lane.
Okay. So, but I don't see the sidewalk continuing down Meadows Lane along the frontage that you own down there. And I know that there's some existing trees along that section there. So the comment that I have regarding that is either you would need to provide sidewalks along that full property frontage, or you would need to request a waiver from that requirement. I know that there's not sidewalks on Meadows Lane kind of heading down, but there are a lot of people who park their vehicles, who pick up their kids
For all the games.
and for all of the games in the athletic fields. So I actually think that it would be really beneficial to have some sort of curb ramp and sidewalk along Meadows to allow people to enter into the site using the pathways that you're providing, because people do use that street there for parking and access into the site for dropping off kids, athletic events, those sorts of things. So I think it would be really beneficial to have that. Regardless, if you're not going to provide it, though, we do need an updated waiver letter or waiver list to include that, since it is a requirement to provide.
Sure. The thought process that we had was, the difficulty here was, number one, the trees, but, you could avoid them. But then if you where does it tie in here? Because it's just, you're in the middle of the road, you know, halfway down the block, and so that's why we kind of struggled with that.
Yeah.
And kind of kept it here at the corner, but to your point, so we'll probably just have to ask for that waiver. I'm go out in the field tomorrow, I'll be there tomorrow, and we'll look and see. But I don't know, would you, you know, to do an ADA ramp, you wouldn't want that dumping into the middle of the road, right? That's not, I don't think that's allowed, is it?
No, and I don't know if you're proposing an ADA ramp. I mean, we should have an ADA ramp at the corner where it ties
That's-
in.
Yes, that's
Is
an
that-
ADA ramp.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I understand it would kind of be like a sidewalk to nowhere, but, you know, just something to enable people to get from Meadows into the property without walking in the street, because that corner, I walk down Meadows Lane frequently, so crossing over Coopertown there, when the cars are all parked, because you have
Mayhem.
the tree cover, and vehicles, it gets a little bit blocked from a sight distance. So it would be helpful, I think, to allow people to enter, if they're coming on Meadows, if they're parking on Meadows,
They can jump right on.
to get onto the sidewalk, so even if it terminates at the
right
end
up-
of the
right up to
property
Just bring it
line,
right to the property line.
just to allow people to then get onto the property without walking in the street at that intersection. So the ramp will be there, so if people have
Can get up to the
strollers or
corner.
anything, they can get up that way. But if you don't need the ADA ramp, you can hop up and then not be, you know, walking down the street at that intersection.
Yeah, we can take a look at some
Yeah,
topography
no, I'll
there.
look at it tomorrow, and then we can
Great, thank you.
review that.
And then you said otherwise, the other comments that were provided in the township engineer review letter are will complies?
Yes, we don't see any issues with any of the comments that we received. We'll get those fully addressed and then resubmit our plans once we.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Lou?
Following up on Angela's point about the grading, this project, unlike Linwood, doesn't contemplate dealing with the open spaces to the side and behind the school, because right now, I play softball back there, and I noticed that when you come off the side of the school, it just sort of tumbles down randomly. Were you gonna, is that the cleanup Angela was talking about, or is that something else?
I mean, I know there was no plans.
No plans.
Only to address within the limits of disturbance for the,
Okay.
for the additions and the
So
parking.
all that other is
parking
just
lot,
remain
correct.
as is?
Yeah, that's correct.
Hey, Chuck,
Yes,
is this plan, is a new stormwater management ordinance applicable to this project?
I believe this was prior to the new stormwater ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any follow-up questions from the planning commission?
and we have the principal here, just in case there was any other logistical questions you had.
Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, we look forward then to your resubmission with the revisions, and we will see you before us when that is available.
Great, thank
All right,
you.
Appreciate it.
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, second item on our agenda is a proposed preliminary final subdivision land development for 1039 Sproul Road. This is to subdivide an existing 2.8 acre site into 4 new single-family lots with single-family dwellings and stormwater facilities proposed for each lot. This is the first time that we have seen this application. And who is present for the applicant?
Hi, good evening. My name's Deborah Shulsky with the firm of Riley Viper, Hanakali Greco, here on behalf of the owner applicant. Also with me on behalf of the owner and the applicant is Patrick Gibbons and Paul Bloomfield, and our civil engineer, John Anderson. John's going to walk you through the plan in a moment, but I just wanted to give you a very generic overview. As indicated, the property before you this evening is located at 1039 Sproul Road. It's in the R1A zoning district. It's 2.8 acres in size. It previously had a single-family dwelling on the property, which has since been demolished, and the applicant is proposing a 4-lot, single-family home residential subdivision. The access point is going to remain the same where it currently exists to access the property. However, there's going to need to be some widening and some site distance requirements to meet the current PennDOT requirements on the state road there. We did receive a review letter from the township engineer. It was also previously reviewed by your zoning officer. We know there's some zoning relief that we're going to be submitting to the zoning hearing board for. We were waiting to get that review letter first so that we could, make sure that we had all the relief that we needed to go to the ZHB. It really predominantly involves steep slopes, which are just where the existing access point is and what are needed to be disturbed in order to create the safe site distance to access the property. It's also believed to be man-made steep slopes. So that's something we know we're going to have to address with the zoning hearing board. We'll probably be getting our application in fairly quickly because I understand you guys are very busy here and you've had a lot on the agenda recently. We also have since prepared a response letter to the township engineer indicating that we'll be complying with all the items in that review letter. There are certain waivers which we're happy to go through tonight. Before we get into that, I'll turn it over to John and he can kind of walk you through the specifics of the plan.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Anderson, Cornerstone Consulting. We're the civil engineers for the project, as Debbie had indicated. It's a 4-lot subdivision. There previously was a single-family home up in the center portion of the property, basically in this general area. We are maintaining the same access point that the previous driveway utilized along Sproul Road. And you can just see in this dashed line here, it follows up into a circular parking area up at the top, and then the dwelling used to be in this location. The shaded area, the contouring is the dashed lines, and you can see that it's fairly steep property as it comes from Sproul Road. It comes up into the site from the existing driveway up into the middle portion of the property, and it pretty much levels off up here. The heavy dark lines indicate steep slopes in a greater percentage of 25%. The lighter is 15 to 25% steep slopes. And then that's what Debbie was indicating, that we need to seek some relief from the zoning hearing board for encroachment into those slope areas. The reason for pointing out the existing conditions plan is to show you why we have configured the lot subdivision based on what the plan is before you, is primarily because maintaining the existing driveway location as it is on Sproul Road and utilizing the upper flat area or the plateau area up in the middle area for the dwellings themselves. To do more of a traditional subdivision where we'd pull multiple driveways off of Sproul Road itself is not feasible for this property. It would entail a lot more encroachment into steep slopes. It'd be very difficult to actually design along Sproul Road due to the elevation gain from Sproul into the site. I just wanted to point that out to show you why we've located the 4 dwellings or the 4 lots as that's presenting before you this evening. As you can see, we're maintaining that driveway. These solid lines indicate the contours. These are 1-foot contours. And you can see we're trying to gain elevation up into the plateau area to site these proposed 4 residential homes. So basically, it's an existing single lot property that had a previous 1 residential dwelling, and we're adding 3 more for a total of 4 dwelling units to this property. And as Debbie had indicated, it's a 2.8 acre lot. It's R1A zoning, and these lots, with some minor modifications to address the township engineer's review, they are in conformance with the zoning code. We will be providing stormwater management for the property in the form of underground infiltration and detention facilities, so they won't be visible from grade. They're underground. Primary one located near Sproul Road to collect the majority of the driveway and some of the lot impervious coverage from this lot here. And then we're spreading out additional infiltration detention basins up along the side of the property and up into the back. And that's how we're trying to comply with, not trying, but we are complying with the township ordinances with regards to stormwater management. We do have some tree removal, and we are providing tree replacement. And this is indicating how we are replacing those trees that are being removed and also showing compliance with the landscape code. We have made applications to shade tree. We have not been there yet, and we will proceed to the Shade Tree Commission to seek their approval as well. Clicking. the same thing. And like we had indicated, we are here to discuss the township engineer's review letter and the waivers that are here. We have met with the township staff prior to this meeting, and they'd indicated that planning commission have some comments for us, so maybe we should just turn it over to you guys to try and expedite the meeting this evening.
So can you just clarify, you have not yet applied for your ZHB application?
We have not. We have it ready to go. We were just waiting to get the review, which we now have to clarify, the scope of the zoning relief. So there's enough, I don't want to say a number, I believe there's like 8 items, but we don't need relief from all that. We're going to be making revisions to the plan. I believe we already made those. So it's really just narrowed down to the steep slopes that we're going to be requesting relief from. And it's just percentage-wise, it's a fairly small amount that we need. And again, it's for purposes of creating site distance, which is currently non-conforming right now for the existing access point.
Angela, I know you had many comments. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure.
Okay.
I had quite a few comments, and rather than go through all of them, I wrote them down, and I'll just give them to you. But there are a couple things I want to talk about. Number one, the existing right-of-way on Sproul Road. Have you researched that with PennDOT?
The existing right-of-way, yes.
You have? Okay, because the 33-foot right-of-way, as shown on your plan, brings you to like the middle of the shoulder on the other side. I just wanted to make sure that that right-of-way information was correct.
I will go back and quiz my surveyor, in-house surveyor, and we will, again, review that to make sure, but I'm pretty confident of the right-of-way that's shown. We are showing the ultimate right-of-way as well, but yes, I'm confident.
Okay, have you spoken with Aqua PA about the water service?
We have done some initial conversations with them, but we have not made application yet.
Have they seen this plan?
We have not made application yet.
I'm skeptical that they'll approve a line going through a retaining wall up into a property. Okay, they probably would want something a little more accessible from their viewpoint in case they have to maintain it. There are a lot of utilities that cross between properties and things like that. Will there be a homeowners association that identifies maintenance requirements?
Yes, there will be.
Okay. And I imagine there'll be all kinds of cross easements established where, like the driveway and the utilities that cross. Okay.
That's correct.
And they'll be documented on the final plans.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The sanitary sewer. I noticed that your plan that it kind of crossed the center line of Sproul Road like 2 or 3 times. Is there a reason for that, or was it just the convenient way to do it? I think from a viewpoint of traffic maintenance during construction, it might be easier if everything was on one side of the center line.
We can look at that
So
and move that over.
take a look at that. The other thing is, the township has an ordinance that basically specifies that anybody within 200 feet of a sanitary sewer is supposed to connect to it. I don't know if the properties that you're going past that are on Sproul Road, I don't believe they're on public sewer. Chuck, would you know that?
I don't believe there's any sewer down in that particular area.
So. You're on public sewer?
Not all of them, no. We're one of the few, 1030 Sproul Road.
Across the street, okay. All right, I'm just saying that it might make sense to, as you're building that line, to put in a lateral connection for those properties that aren't serviced, so that we don't have to dig up the road twice at some point in time.
Got it.
And Angela, if I can piggyback off of that real fast, the line should be sized to handle the capacity if all of the homes that line it were to connect, so that
That's
there's.
correct. I mean, we're proposing an 8-inch line right now, which is
Okay.
pretty standard. It's a pretty steep road through there, so yes, it would have capacity for additional homes connecting.
You'll have to confirm that the front portion of lot 4, the flag, if you want to call it, the pole, is at least 60 feet wide. Otherwise, it's considered a flag lot if it's less than 60 feet, and flag lots aren't permitted in the township.
We know we have to make some minor adjustments to that we'll call it the flagpole. It is currently shown at 60 feet wide, but there's some additional notations that we want to add to the plan to show compliance with Township Engineers Review Letter.
All right, what's the reasoning for the, I guess, the turnaround area close to Squirrel Road off the main driveway?
Primarily for, just in case there was a delivery vehicle that didn't want to go all the way up. It was just an area that we could turn around in if need be, or potentially cars that are finding, that they need to pull off and just stage there. It's not for additional parking, it was just for turnaround.
Well, given its location in relationship to the 4 houses, I think it might be better served getting up closer to the cluster than all the way down at the bottom.
It just happened to be a nice flat area right there, so yes, we can look at that.
Yeah, the rest of the stuff, like I said, I made comments, and I'll hand them out to you and take a look at them. They're little things primarily, but if we want to get this thing into the final stage, they have to be addressed to some degree. I think that's all.
Thanks, Angela. Well, since we're on the left side over here, Kim?
Yeah. I appreciate you guys. You provided some insight as to why this configuration was proposed. Especially appreciate using the existing access and not adding additional ones. Can you just go a little bit deeper and explain why subdividing it into 4 parcels and why the homes specifically situated the way they are? I appreciate some are in the flat areas, but I definitely have some concerns about the slope disturbance.
Primarily to provide for a 4-lot subdivision and to utilize the existing driveway, and to not disturb additional steep slopes, we were locating the basically how those buildings are sited in areas that were not increasing our area disturbance. The primary area disturbance is in slopes in excess of 25%, which is the darker area.
And none of the homes are in the steep slopes.
Right, so we're also trying to site homes that aren't in the steep slopes. We do have one of the buildings that's located here, but we didn't show it properly. This is going to be a cantilevered area that wouldn't disturb this, and it just cantilever over.
That was my concern, so that makes sense.
If we went to more of a traditional subdivision, which would front directly on Sproul Road with all driveways, it would be a significant amount of increase in land disturbance, earth grading, and it would just make it cost prohibitive to do that.
And is there a reason you chose to subdivide it in 4 parcels as opposed to 3 or 5? Or
We looked at, I think we can actually, with the land area, we can even increase the subdivision number of lots. However, we brought it back down to a more conservative approach. Number one, steep slope disturbance, and also just the way that the property is configured with the contouring, it didn't lend itself for an increased number. However, to reduce it down to 2 or 3 is also, you need some sort of economies of scale to pay for the development.
Understood. And my last question is have you considered any of the construction logistics? I mean, getting up that steep slope and then doing the construction itself. Have you considered that? There's also a lot of trees in the area. One of my concerns is you have a proposed plan of what it's going to be after the fact, but during construction, some trees get knocked down and areas get disturbed, even if that's not the final intent. So has that been considered at all?
Yeah, it does look like it's a fairly steep driveway. However, there were construction vehicles that were up there to demolish the existing dwelling that's there. The applicant can tell you that the fire department was actually up there, not demolishing, but controlling the fire as a practice venue, so that there is access and it is able to be done. Yes, we are very concerned with additional trees to be removed, and yeah, we are very conscious of how the building would be staged. And so because we have a nice flat area at the top, would be primarily where all the staging would be, and then the homes would be built in accordance with that, 1, 2 at a time.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the background and everything. In the nature of where we are, I appreciate, I mean, this is a lot. So I'm looking forward to all the revisions and the process here, especially increasing the housing supply when it's in such high demand. So there's a neighbor here. No interaction with the community's been okay and whatnot. Okay, all in solidarity, I guess, with the 6 of us. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the revision then. So thanks for the background.
Steve?
Thank you for the presentation. It's helpful. The front on Spruill is the steep slope in front is very heavily treed. Are you going to leave those trees alone as a kind of separation from the traffic and noise?
So in order to provide a site, so the existing driveway doesn't have a proper site distance today because of the embankment along Sproul Road, primarily in the southerly or downhill movement. So we are proposing a retaining wall in this location so that we can grade this area out to provide a site distance or sight line from a vehicle staged here at the driveway so they can see oncoming cars coming up the hill in a northerly direction. So there are some small brush trees that are in this location that will be removed, primarily right along here. And then we are proposing to replace those trees, and we can put them closer to Sproul Road as long as we don't violate the site distance. We can move them down. We are proposing an underground basin in this location, but primarily this area here is being graded or shown to be graded to provide a site distance. We are in contact with PennDOT. We're trying to work with PennDOT to see if that site distance can be reduced. And if that site distance can be reduced, they have to approve it, but if it can be reduced, it pulls that arrow, see this arrow here, that's our site distance or sight line, it would pull it down, and even if we lost, 50, 60 feet, it would be a considerable reduction in encroachment into this area.
There have been complaints from time to time about flooding on roads, and it would seem if you cut out too much of those, even the shrubs, but certainly the trees, you're going to increase the flow of water onto Spruill. I don't know, but has that been looked at? Have the engineers evaluated that?
We're proposing capturing all the building runoff and the driveway runoff from our proposed development into detention facilities prior to going on to Sproul Road. So any impervious coverage that we're adding, we are collecting any of the stormwater runoff, tying it into underground detention basins, and then it ties into Sproul Road itself. So that would reduce, there's no existing stormwater management on the property today. I understand your concern about removing trees and vegetation along there, but this area, the majority of the existing site is, it doesn't have a significant amount of undergrowth that would prevent, it's more of just a grass area. It's got large-scale trees on there, and we're trying to preserve as much as we can. But yes, we are concerned with any additional stormwater that's running off the property on the Sproul Road. We're trying to capture that. We have a series of storm inlets along here to capture it before it goes onto Sproul Road and tie it into this underground basin that's located near the entrance drive.
Yeah, I think it's tricky both ways because that stretch of road, which I use regularly, is a little hairy in terms of driving, and the line of sight coming out really is an important thing. But on the other hand, you don't want the runoff, which brings me back to an earlier point about construction. I imagine you're going to have some significant erosion control.
Correct. This will trigger an MPDS application. It will be reviewed by the Conservation District and DEP we have not made that submission yet. We were waiting to get at least some preliminary comments from the township engineer, and get through zoning, and we'll be making that submission to the Conservation District for MPDS and erosion control.
For the houses on the, I guess, top of your page on, was it the east side, is there any front yard on those? I'm looking at the plan, it kind of shows a rear yard and a couple 15-foot side yards. The sheet 1 of 16 has that kind of marked. I didn't know if Two of the houses have like a 40-yard front setback.
So if you're talking about the,
Yeah.
I'll refer to them as flag lots, for lack of a better term, but they have longer poles as they extend down to Sproul Road, and Lot 1 primarily has the main driveway access up into the property. So their front yard, they're actually oriented so they're facing the drive lane, and both lots 1 and 4 are facing the drive lane, kind of positioned for the front of the dwelling along the driveway, and then they have just long stretches down to Sproul Road. I'm not sure if I understood your question.
Yeah, I was just kind of trying to figure out what meant by which is actually front,
How they're oriented.
like the front of the house, or yes.
Go ahead.
No, that I was kind of
I was
confused in
confused
how
about
that
the
was,
orientation of the map.
which way the house was oriented and
When we rode up there.
what constituted front. Okay. I had one other question. I guess for the couple retaining walls that are on here, are there any like underground easements or anything that are going to be needed from any neighbors or anything like that?
Well, again, a lot of times what we'll handle, being that there's an HOA or that will be created, and that HOA will maintain the retaining walls if they spread across properties. Typically, we can handle a small development like this with blanket easements, or we would do specific easements. Most likely, the sewer authority is going to want a specific easement for the sewer line, same with the water authority. But for cross-access, for such a small development, we would tend to try and utilize blanket easements, and that would be contained within language of the HOA.
Gotcha. And the ones on the left and right of the page it's all staying on the properties.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to reiterate, I had initial concerns as well about the shared easements, which you touched on through the HOA. I've seen plenty of developments, though, where we have the underground infiltration facilities that don't end up capturing the water. So I'm looking at, I'm not sure what lot number it is, but the lower right one. Because the upper two, I'm just looking, so the upper two would essentially be discharging the water, and the water would just kind of flow downhill. So
Well, this kind of plateaus up in this area.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we've gotten really good infiltration rates up here, and we're doing 100% infiltration for the 100-year storm. Any stormwater that bypasses the inlet collections would then sheet flow. It actually flows back towards the other side.
Goes the other way, okay.
Yeah, these guys here would be flowing back, towards these properties. But again, 100% infiltration in those locations. We're not doing a positive discharge. It's just like an overflow. Everything else, primarily right along this line here, discharges towards Sproul Road.
So what's your infiltration facility in the arm of that one flag?
This one here.
Yeah,
It's primarily to collect a portion of this driveway and a portion of this house.
and is that just yard inlets that are capturing?
Yard inlets, and then roof drains would tie directly into those basins.
Okay, so in the arm, you're having roof drains, and then the upper one is also connected to the other side of the roof drains?
Yeah, so there's a half of this building's tied into this underground basin here. I do want to correct myself. This building and this location is tied in with direct roof drains. What we're also trying to do with the rest of the dwellings are directing the downspouts to overland swales to the basins. There's a yard inlet here that's collecting a swale here. There's a swale directed towards this basin and an inlet. Typically, for a residential development, they like to disconnect the roof drains and tie it through grassline swales to promote infiltration.
Okay. I've seen it go both ways.
Yeah, if it's the preference to tie them in, then we can look at doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I would defer in terms of functionality to our engineer for that. I just see, it just requires a lot of maintenance and education to the homeowners on how to do that, because they just see a pit and they see a swale and they see a place where they can dump their grass clippings, and it fills in over time.
Well,
And it
again,
doesn't
this one,
function as a swale.
yeah, so this wouldn't be, swales would be of a concern. These are underground basins. They're not rain gardens or above ground basins.
No, I understand, but you're saying that they're being, they're daylight swales.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And that's what it's the swales that connect into the underground infiltration facilities that people tend to fill in because they don't understand the function of them. So you can educate the first property owner on this, but then multiple down the line, they don't know about it, and it gets messy. So I just generally have concerns about the functionality, and especially if you're saying that any excess sheet flow is actually going to be flowing off the property to those folks behind them. And I don't know what their topography looks like on the other side, but I would just have some concerns about the potential complaints that the township would hear about stormwater runoff then exiting this property onto adjoining neighbors.
We can't have it sheet off of ours. Right? I mean, we have to control it on our property.
We are controlling.
Yeah, we can't have it go onto other people's properties. We have to control
I understand you're
it, yeah.
designing it for that, but not all engineering designs end up working the same way. So I'm just saying, I've seen it lots of different ways and lots of complaints coming from things,
Right.
perceived or not. So I just want to make sure that that however it's being designed is functional. So I appreciate the additional explanation how it's going to be working.
And it's going to be, as John indicated, we have to get an NPDS permit. So DP will, in addition to the township engineer, DP will be reviewing everything as well.
Yeah, well, they're not looking at it for the engineering, right? They're just looking at it for the ENS. Right, so the other concern, let me just see. So you had touched on the kind of turnaround area towards the lower half. I don't see any truck turning templates. You said that there was a fire truck that had accessed the site for the demo portion. But given the proposed driveway configuration for the new homes, do you have truck turning templates, or have you reached out to the local fire company to see if their ladder trucks or whichever apparatus they would need could get to all of the homes and then back out of the site?
Well, we did not add it to the plan, but we can.
Okay. Also just delivery trucks, Amazon trucks, just to make sure that those can function and turn around in those driveways, because you have to assume that people will have their vehicles in the driveways. These aren't going to be clear driveways for the trucks to turn around in, that there will be vehicles parked there, basketball nets or something else to that effect. So just wanted to make sure that those folks who are living there are going to be able to have deliveries and other emergency vehicles able to access the site safely. It's already been discussed, but I just also wanted to express my concern about the amount of disturbance that will result from the construction of this site, and just the orientation of the houses. So as I'm looking at this, it looks fine on paper from the boxes fitting in the lines. But when you actually look at the built homes and then what that means for the future homeowners, you have a new homeowner who wants to come in and build a patio, put on a deck, do some other things. You explained the one house is going to be cantilevered. Will the other house on the lower slope also have a cantilever?
Not necessarily, no. It
Okay.
doesn't need to be.
So just something to consider as you're designing the house and as you're thinking about how a future homeowner might want to use the property. You have your replacement trees that come right up to the house. A lot of people will end up cutting them down because they want more sunlight, or they're concerned about the tree falling on the house. So I just generally have concerns about the location of the proposed replacement trees, their proximity to the house, only because I see that it's encroaching into the area that people would want to add future improvements. And so now you're going to have a future homeowner who just bought this beautiful new house, who wants to put some sort of outdoor recreation space or a shed or something to that effect. They're dealing with steep slopes, so they're already contending with some topography limitations, and now they've got these trees that are kind of right up against the house. So I just see that as a future conflict, and I would want to see a design that would enable folks to make improvements to their house within, understood that this is a land development, that you can't control all future property owners. But this is something that we think about, and this is something that's going to be the township's problem in the future. So I'm trying to mitigate any sort of conflicts. So just consider how a future homeowner might use the property. I'm looking at your landscape plan up on the upper left-hand side, and where you have your trees, it's exactly where somebody might want to have a patio or a deck or something to that effect. So Yeah, so you can see the trees that are flanking on either side of that rear bump out area. I'm assuming that's some sort of like great room or kitchen or something. And that's where people would want to have those improvements. So that's just going to create a conflict in the future. They're just going to end up cutting down those trees, which doesn't do anything for us when we're talking about wanting to maintain the tree canopy cover. So that's something that I would want to reconsider and come up with some maybe alternative locations for trees and just think about, I don't know if it would be helpful to just kind of map out like future improvement areas, dash it out to kind of give the future homeowners an understanding of where they could and could not place those types of improvements that we can guarantee that they're going to want to put in: sheds, decks, patios. And then I wanted to mention, so in Chuck's letter, there was the discussion about the requirement to either set aside land for open space and parks and recreation facilities or a fee in lieu. I don't think it necessarily makes sense to provide any sort of public parkland on this property, just given the steep slopes and the nature of the development. So I would recommend a fee in lieu. I don't want to speak for the rest of the Planning Commission, but that would be something that I think would be supported. And then similarly, no sidewalks are being proposed. We also have the option to do a fee in lieu of sidewalks. There's no other sidewalks in this area. It's a really steep slope. It's around a curve. It's really inappropriate to try to put walking facilities along this property, in my opinion. There's plenty of other places in the township where we could utilize some infill of roadway connection, or I'm sorry, sidewalk connections. So I believe that would also be an appropriate opportunity for a fee in lieu.
Okay.
And those are all my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other Planning Commission comments?
Yeah, regarding the fee in lieu of open space, I don't disagree with what Maggie said, but I would like you to follow procedures to determine the open space or fee in lieu of requirements that's listed in the ordinance. And basically, the Planning Commission doesn't decide, the Board of Commissioners decides. Okay, so you need to do that before you can finalize anything on your plans, because if they decide they want the open space, it's going to kind of mess up your layout a little bit.
Thanks, Angelo. Do we have any other comments from the Planning Commission? David?
The two fee and lieu's that Maggie spoke of seem to make sense.
Okay. Yeah, and I think when they come back with a revision, we can go through the waiver requests in more detail and see if those are updated at all, so we can review them then. Okay, thank you. No other Planning Commission comments, so we'll move to public comment. I will start on this side. So if you'd like to make a comment, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And speak into the microphone, please.
Sure. Scott Hessen, 3940 Darby Road. I'm, I believe, the neighbor on the top. There are 3 water pits on the current property. One of them serves our house. And I wonder if that's been looked at. Has that been figured out where it goes? And do any of these constructions, including the driveway, will that impact our water? I'm very concerned about the possibility of heavy equipment causing damage to what are now 60-year-old water lines. We have a right-of-way in our deed for water, and we used to get power from Sproul Road. We moved it over to Darby a number of years ago, but the water line still persists. And just want to make sure that that's a big concern.
Scott, when you say water, are you talking about public water?
Yes.
Or stormwater? Public water?
No, public water.
Okay.
Or drinking water.
So the line comes from Sproul through this property to your property?
Correct.
Is that, okay. Can the applicant comment to that? Do you have that shown in your plans?
We do not have it shown. We will show it.
Okay.
Research is needed and find out if there's where the located. And we generally know where.
There are 3 water pits.
We were surprised to learn there's a third. I was aware of the second, and we traced that one. We haven't traced yours. I'm not sure where it is.
It's
something we should
yeah,
discuss.
it's adjacent to the other 2 water pits.
Okay.
I know where the pit is, but I don't know where should talk about that.
Yeah, so if you could touch base with the applicant and share information after the meeting, that's something that we're going to want.
Aside from its existence, I don't know where it goes either.
We have your deed,
We
and
have the
then
deed.
what so they can work out some way to trace it.
There are companies that'll go out and trace the line for you.
Yeah, you can like video scope them.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just worry that because of where the perceived water pit is, it looks like it's going to be going across a lot of their construction.
Okay, thank you for that information. Chuck, I think, can we just make a note to make sure that the revised plans would show, I'm sorry, what's your last name again?
Hessen, H-E-S-S-E-N.
Mr. Hessen's property, the utility lines that connect to his property.
Pretty done.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. If the applicant could also do some investigation to the existing condition of those water lines, that would be helpful for the planning commission to understand.
Thanks, Kim. Ma'am, did you have a supplemental comment?
Yeah. Actually, this is the first time we're seeing this plan. Is it
I'm sorry.
published anywhere?
I'm sorry,
I'm Meg Hessen, Scott's wife,
Thank you.
3940 Darby Road, adjacent immediately to this proposed building. So I'm curious as to whether this plan is published anywhere. As I say, this is the first time we're seeing it. We'd like to kind of study it, if it's available online or somewhere.
Jamie, does the township make these available? I mean, typically no, because these are considered copyright plans, so they're not final approved plans. If you would like to request a copy, you can request it from the applicant, who can share it with you to see this. This is the first time that they are presenting this plan in a public forum, so this is the first time for everybody to view
Okay.
it. But I would consult with the applicant. We're not able to provide that copy to you at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, previously, when we've been through this, we've seen plans online and so forth, but that's fine. I'd also like to just clarify, you mentioned earlier that everything here comported with the zoning requirements. Could you just verify that each of these lots is a full half acre?
I mean, we're showing compliance on the zoning plan for the area. Yes, I mean, I can provide you, I'll get your information.
Okay, that would be great. And I believe you mentioned earlier your concerns about drainage onto adjacent, stormwater drainage onto adjacent properties, and I'd just like to acknowledge that we have concerns about that. We already get a lot of drainage from that area and a lot of erosion, and just want to highlight that that is, in fact, a significant observation that you made in terms of potential problems there. And I think that's all I want to say, except, you know, it's kind of a, perhaps not, perhaps a minor consideration, but we do have the Shade Tree Commission and so forth. And I would like to emphasize the fact that there are a number of really beautiful, mature specimen type trees on that property that I hope you will make every effort to preserve. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. In the middle here, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Eisenhuth. I live at 1047 Sproul, and I believe that this might be the outline of my house. Our concerns right here, there is already a grade towards my house, and the water runs down the side yard and then away. I also have an in-ground pool located here with a newly refurbished retaining wall, and I'm worried about increased runoff towards the back of my house. I don't know exactly how far the distance is from my wall to the property line, but there is already a slight grade in that area, And my other concern is if this is a proposed retaining wall that goes to the end of my property, which I believe that this might be my property, does that ruin the integrity of the hill right there by him adding a wall? And where does that cut off? At what level? Is it street level? Is it the top of the hill? And what else was there? Did you step up on? Okay. But I this is my property line right here, and I do have a 20 by 40 in-ground pool, concrete pool, and there is a wall here that was just redone within the last 3 years. I have an outdoor space that we sit and grill, but my worry is this, where this is, and if this, I don't know how they work, or do they get clogged, and does this create more runoff to where it's going to put pressure on my wall, water pressure, and push that away towards the pool, and cause structural issues in the future, with also freezing and thawing in the winter. And like I said, I don't know how those work, or I don't even know how it looks. And then down here in the corner, we were talking about the water pits. I am also one of the property owners that is connected to this water pit that runs kind of parallel up to the back of the house. And I don't know, again, with any kind of building, is that going to disturb the foundation of the piping or whatnot? Or will we have any issues with that, So that's a couple of my concerns.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Just to kind of touch base, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong. So the stormwater facility that's proposed in the area that you were indicating, right there, that's an underground infiltration facility,
Okay.
which means that it's a big pit dug underground filled with stone, and they're connecting, this is the one that has the roof drain connecting into it, or this is a swale?
It's just getting overland swells, but we'll plot the location of the pool and wall. We can slide that
Okay.
further down. We can address that.
Is this an open, like, steel grate, or is it?
No, you won't see it.
You won't see it?
It'll be
Okay,
grass.
okay.
Yeah, so it's an underground facility with then grass on top, so it'll just look like a lawn area.
Okay.
The only thing that you'll see is the inlet drain itself.
Okay.
And then there's going to be a swale, so it's going to be like a graded, kind of sloped, kind of concave depression that you'll see that the water will then flow down that depression that will lead it to that inlet to then go into the underground stormwater facility. So the intent is that any overland flows will be captured in that swale before they cross that property line onto your side, and then go into that underground facility. So that's how it's being designed, and that's what the intent is. But I do appreciate you raising your concerns, and that's just something that I would ask the applicant to consider.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that there is already a slight grade that runs toward my house, and it hasn't caused any issues yet, but I'm afraid of in the future that there could possibly be, a pending problem.
Understood. Thank you for
Okay.
your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
One thing you might want to consider is all those inlets that contribute to the underground basins to maybe sump those 6 inches below grade, so that the capacity of those inlets is more reliable than having them just at the surface. And looking at the elevations for your grates, they're pretty much at grade. So I think for those to work more efficiently, it would help if they were sumped and actually the water would be forced to those locations, not bypassed.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Jennifer Eisenuth. I live at 1047 Sproul Road, so I'm at the property that Kurt was just mentioning. some of the same issues and concerns. I do have a question with the stormwater. When it goes into those facilities, where does it just sit there and then percolate into the ground? Or is there like something that takes it out to a main sewer line? That's a concern of mine, because if it just percolates there to add to what Kurt was saying with the grade, and our property and our wall and our pool, there's a large concern there. The other question I have is how the sewer lines tie in, where their sewers are, and how that then impacts my property from a sewer aspect. Are they going to be laying new sewer pipe, or, where does that all tie in? The other question I had is, what is the distance, what is the proposed or the maintenance or the ordinance for the distance between properties? The house number, this house right here is proposed. The distance to property line, what is that ordinance that they have to be?
So it's 15 feet. So there's a minimum side yard setback of 15 feet. So it looks like that particular house is just about 15 and a half feet because it's angled the way that it is. So that corner is 15 and a half feet from that side property line.
And how about this one?
And then the one up there is listed as 36.6 feet to the property line, to the closest point.
That looks closer. Okay. And then the other question I have with regards to the hill. So this hill is, it's not super steep, but it's degrading year after year after year. But will that have an impact with a retaining wall being put there? Does that impact our property and our part of the wall?
We're not proposing any improvements or any grading on your property. The wall is about 50 or 60, it stops 50 or 60 feet from the corner of your property.
Okay.
Right about there. It's actually about 40 feet from that property corner.
Okay.
And so this is going to be leveled off for site triangle.
The front of that
Yeah,
wall.
and then this is all existing grade to remain. We're
Okay.
not touching the grade.
Okay. And then lastly, is there any kind of, these look like trees that are going to be put in between the two properties? Is
Correct.
that?
Yep.
Okay. So there's no like fencing proposed?
No fencing at this time proposed.
Okay. And then my last question is, how does an HOA work if there's not an HOA in that area? How does that work?
Sure. Okay, so let me go back through your questions. So we'll touch on the HOA. And I'm speaking generally, not specific to their proposal, but essentially it's going to be some sort of shared agreement that all four property owners would buy into it for shared maintenance and agree. So what they were talking about earlier was something called a blanket easement. So rather than mapping out a dotted line that sits on the map, it's just an easement that covers the whole property because they all will share the driveway. They're going to have the shared services for the stormwater facilities. So essentially, in a larger residential subdivision where there's an HOA, you have bylaws, you have officers, you have the whole 9 yards. This is probably going to be some sort of scaled down version of it, I'm sure. But essentially, they will have a pot of money that they all contribute to. Please stop me if I'm getting any of this wrong. They'll have a pot of money that they're contributing to that can be used then for shared services. So if they want to hire somebody with a little skid steer to come and, plow the driveway for snow, and then when it comes time to do maintenance of the stormwater facilities, inspection, any repairs that's needed, that would all come out of that shared kind of resource, and that they can go in together as the group of four to hire contractors to do that sort of work. Did I mostly hit on it? Okay, great.
So then in that same vein, then they can't change this aspect of the property site? Like they couldn't put up a fence or?
I don't think there's anything preventing a fence as long as it meets all the township zoning ordinances. The HOA would not necessarily prevent a fence being put up there.
So it would be a private property.
Okay.
So there would be an HOA that would cover kind of the shared facilities, but that would still be a private property. So the person who owned that house could still build a fence or a shed or the other things that we talked about on their property since they own that land. But all of the trees and things would be installed as part of the subdivision plan, which would have to remain because they represent what's called the replacement tree rate. So when you take down larger trees, you have to replace them with an equivalent number of trees. Since we can't plant, trees that are 2 foot in diameter,
Right.
they have to grow. So you plant them as smaller trees. So you just plant more trees to make up for the trees that came down. So this is based on their tree replacement calculation. So based on the size and number of trees that are being taken down, these are the trees that are being proposed in their place. Do you know what species you're proposing?
They're on the plan.
Okay.
We'll do an approval from the Shade Tree Commission. Some more.
Yeah, so it looks like you've got flowering cherries, white oak, linden trees, and then Princeton American elm. So those ultimately have different mature heights and canopy coverage.
Yep, okay.
You had a question about the stormwater facility. So the applicant was saying earlier that the upper stormwater facilities had good infiltration rates. So what that means, so these facilities, and again, please stop me if I'm getting any of this wrong. You dig a pit, you line it with geotextile fabric, you line it with stone, and then you put pipes in there that have perforations. And then either the roof drains will drain into this or the swales will connect into the inlets. So the water gets into this facility and it fills up the voids of those stones. And they said they had good infiltration rates. There's calculations that the engineers come up with in terms of meeting that infiltration requirement. But yes, the water will then infiltrate into the ground. So the stone and the geotextile fabric helps to prevent that area from getting clogged with sediments, so that the water then infiltrates through and the voids create that capacity to temporarily hold it until it can infiltrate into the ground. And if that pit fills up, you said you did have a discharge valve?
No, I mean, just saying, if it does fill up, it's going to hit the lowest inlet and then run towards Sprout Road. Our intent is not to have it drain towards the property line or their property line. Again, we can look at the placement of that underground basin and slide it further down so that as water bypasses, it will not flow towards the pool.
Okay. Did that make sense to you? Okay. I think there was another question that you asked in there. Sanitary sewer. I will not even attempt to answer that one. I will kick that one back over to the applicant.
So sanitary sewer, we're doing a main.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you come up to the microphone, please?
We're doing a main down. We're tying individual laterals from these two homes into a manhole generally located in between these two lots, comes down towards Sproul Road, basically along the property line. And then we're running a main from the sewer interceptor in Marple Township all the way up the road to this location, which then would extend into the site. We're picking up these 4 homes via that sewer extension. So we're not proposing any improvements on your property. It was mentioned that for future homes to connect, that we would provide laterals for that, and we can definitely work with the sewer authority to show those lateral locations.
Great. Was that all of your questions?
Yep,
Did we hit them
that was
all?
it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Chuck, is this the old stormwater ordinance or the new one?
This is the new one.
Is it, okay, just to clarify a couple of things on the new stormwater ordinance. The property owners have to provide inspections for 25 years? Is that what the new ordinance calls for?
Well, there's the BMP inspection, which is still in effect. So it's three times every 10 years that it will be inspected.
I thought the new ordinance required that the property owner provide a report every year about the condition of the stormwater facility.
I'll have to go back and look at that. You may be right, Angelo, but the fact is that the township will still do a BMP inspection also.
I don't think it elongated the 10-year time frame, but it did. The change was to the first three. I think the first 3 years, it's an annual, I believe, and then I can double check, but it didn't elongate the 10-year time frame, but it did the frequency of the inspections at the outset.
And the applicant will be required to enter into a stormwater operation maintenance agreement at the time of posting of financial security prior to the plans being recorded, and that'll set forth all the maintenance obligations and inspections, and then that ultimately runs with the land, it gets recorded, it'll be the responsibility of the future homeowner.
Perfect. Thank you. Sir.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wright. I live at 4008 Darby Road, which is right here on the map. My main concern, which I've spoken to both owners in the last year, very nice talks, look forward to the future, very positive attitudes. So I just want to say thank you for that and look forward to this. My concern right away, as I've spoken with these gentlemen, is the water coming into this development. Recently up here on Darby Road, some of you over probably the last, really from March till, not till October, my front was ripped up on a previous water project from the developer of the 2 lots here. So my concern is where the water will be tied into. Will it be coming from up here in my house or somewhere down along here? Long Sproul Road. Okay, fantastic. Next, what I wrote down was, I had a question about why this flag lot. Like looking at knowing the topography of it, I know this is down a little bit, but why not just come over here? I guess is my question. This is not going to be used, or I find it very odd, but not a deal breaker in any kind of way.
Each lot has to have a street frontage.
Has to have street frontage, that's the reason. Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
It's a zoning requirement, so you couldn't have a landlocked lot, so the lot has to have something that.
Perfect, yeah, with the one entrance in here, which.
Even though the entrance is a shared entrance, you have to legally have some
and probably
portion
a
of the
certain amount of
land.
feet.
Correct.
Okay.
That actually touches the street to have a street frontage, even if the access is being provided elsewhere.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much for that answer. Just a concerned citizen. This area here where this entrance is, this is a very dangerous area. Everybody knows this house is being abandoned for the last 25 years. So we all speed by it. I know I do, but I find this a very, very dangerous area. I have 2 young kids here. We know that there's another kid here. So I just have concerns about making it, very visible, lighting. If it's up to the township, maybe reducing the speed around this bend in any kind of way. And then I did also wanted to make a quick comment about the fire trucks when they came it was a demo day where they were practicing. I spoke with the fire chief, and he actually that day told me that they had a hard time getting up this driveway with the fire truck.
Okay.
So I believe it's a real concern. And that is all that I wanted to address. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Good
comment.
luck with your project.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Walt Fredrickson. I live at 4016 Darby Road. It's the first house on Darby Road. My partner, Dr. James Harkins, and I have lived there 26 years. So we have a lot of familiarity with this property behind us. So this is our property right here. We have 2 acres. Again, with familiarity, we've discussed this project about the layout of it, so it's interesting to see where the houses are going to be sited. We pretty much knew that the driveway was going to stay there because the state is so strict on any additional cuts into state highways. It's as Jeff mentioned, it's a very dangerous area in terms of the traffic. I can attest to that because probably early fall I was coming home heading north on Sproul Road, and a pickup truck pulled out of the driveway, probably about 20 feet in front of me. I had to slam on my brakes. I don't know if he didn't see me. And I might mention that there has already been clearance of some brush all along Sproul Road. I know several weeks ago, someone was out there with a chainsaw cutting back a lot of the brush and some of the smaller trees. So there already has been some site clearance in that area. I know someone mentioned they were a little concerned with a water runoff once the vegetation is removed, and they have already removed vegetation to my knowledge. My questions are, will the existing driveway be widened? And I do have concerns about the turnaround, which is scheduled right here. This is obviously in view of our property and our home. Several questions I had have already been answered. I know there's going to be an HOA, so I'm assuming all this land here, which is really to the north of the driveway, won't be part of any of the 4 individual lots. So that's going to be part of the HOA. And I assume some of these areas, like this section here, will be HOA as well.
No,
Oh, it won't be?
they're all 4 individual lots. I would have the applicant explain if there's any intent to have portions of the lot be maintained by some sort of like shared landscaper. But these are all 4 individual lots. So the HOA maintenance responsibilities, I mean, we haven't seen the covenants or declarations or anything like that yet.
Sure.
But it's our understanding from the conversation tonight is that it would cover the shared facilities, primarily the stormwater management facilities, any utilities that cross property lines, and the driveway. But these are all 4 individual lots, so each property owner would be responsible for maintaining the area of their lots.
So the only common or green area would be this section over here to the north of the existing driveway?
I don't believe that's any common, there's no common area proposed on this plan.
Well, who would own this land?
That homeowner.
Which homeowner?
Lot 1, the one that's
This one
up
right
in-
here?
No, the upper one, that one right there.
This home owns this land?
Yes.
Okay. So wouldn't they have to agree to this turnaround area, which it would be on their property?
Well, that would be a condition of them buying the land.
Okay.
This would be built as is, and then the prospective homeowner would see that this is part of the land. So they would need to understand that. And again,
Sure.
there's in the HOA documents, they would outline rules and responsibilities of each homeowner and understanding of maintenance responsibilities and shared resources and all of those things. So that's what the easements that I believe Angela had mentioned originally. And then if there's an HOA, there's going to be some sort of written agreement that the homeowners would all agree to as owners of the lands within that HOA.
I might have missed it then. I think someone mentioned there is going to be an HOA involved here. So what parcels of land would be under the maintenance of the HOA?
All of them.
All-
Yeah, if you want to, do you want to explain it a little bit more?
So it's typically an HOA, if you have a certain amount of units under the Uniform Plant Community Act, you're required to have an HOA. We're not necessarily required to have one here, but we'll have something, if it's not an HOA, it'll be something similar where it'll be a declaration of restrictions and covenants that will apply for maintenance purposes of the 4 lots, where there would be shared, obviously, utility, stormwater management responsibilities, and for the driveway. So there'll be, but there's no. And the wall, unless it's going to be the individual lot owner's responsibility, that's a possibility.
How about the entrance area, the driveway off of Sproul Road, which previously had 2 stone walls which have been taken
So
out?
the entrance would be part of the driveway? Are you asking if the entrance can be widened, or?
No. For instance, like Brittany, there's an entrance, 2 entrances to Brittany across the street on Sproul Road. And I assume that is under an HOA because someone maintains plantings in the fall.
Well,
So there's some kind of control over
Yeah,
a
there will
common
be
HOA.
there will be, whether it's an HOA or it's a legal document that's recorded that requires maintenance responsibilities, that will be in place to ensure the maintenance of the shared driveway. An HOA, typically you have like common elements with open space areas and things like that. There's not going to be any common amenities or open space. It's really more for these maintenance of the driveway, the utility, and the stormwater management.
The remaining questions I have are mostly aesthetic. Have you drawn up plans for the home, exterior elevations, in terms
I
of?
don't know if we've gotten to that
Are they
point
going to be
yet. We're-
stucco? Are they going to be brick, stone?
Yeah.
When, does the planning commission have control over that?
No, we don't.
No, you don't. So I was involved with the 2 lots that are now have new homes on Darby Road. And they presented to us elevations showing what the homes were going to look like. You know, our concern is really aesthetics. It has an impact on the neighborhood, obviously financially, but also aesthetically. You know, it's, you know, 4 new homes.
And all I can tell is I know my client wants to produce a nice product, obviously a marketable product that can be sold to people in this community, and I'm sure that they're going to do a very stellar job of putting together a nice aesthetic architecture.
At some point, when that is executed, can the adjoining neighbors be advised of what the elevation is going to look like?
I mean, I'm sure my client's happy to, you know, talk with you throughout the way. I don't know it, you know.
I'm an architect. I'm looking forward to designing these houses, but we don't even know how many. So I have to be
On this driveway, will there be street lights? There will be no common street lights? No, okay. In terms of the planting, have you hired a landscape architect? And if so, what firm is it in terms of executing the plantings?
So we're just showing shade tree or street tree requirements for this. We haven't done, my firm, my guys in my firm are actually landscape architect and also designing it, but all we're doing is showing tree replacement. We haven't done a specific landscaping plan for each individual.
Do you know the square footage of each home on each lot?
We have the building footprints listed on the plan.
It's 2,060 square feet.
2,050?
60.
Is that controlled by the township? No, okay.
I
No,
mean,
so
to the
with the-
extent that
at
building
the-
coverage, there's a maximum building coverage, that's, you
Yeah.
know, that's controlled, but
Right,
the
so at
actual.
this stage in the process, what we're looking at is the actual land development. So we're looking at essentially the meets and bounds, the actual physical layout of the lots and the other amenities that we've been discussing tonight. The specifics that you're referencing, the actual architectural renderings, building elevations, floor plans, that is all determined at a later stage, and is not part of the approval process. So they may not even have that done by the time that this land development is approved, and that's not something that we control. So they're just showing boxes right now as conceptual footprints, but what you're asking for is not generally applicable, and it sounds like not available at this stage in the process. That might be available later on, and I would encourage you to touch base with the applicant to have those questions, but that's not something that, A, we regulate, B, the planning commission reviews, or C, is available right now. Yeah.
A lot of times we do it prior to building permit because we want to make sure that we get everything approved, we get our zoning approved, our land development before they expend the cost of putting together architectural plans.
And I know Meg mentioned earlier a request to have a copy of the diagram for, you know, reviewing it. Can I also be included in you know, we would just like to be able to look at it and examine it.
We're going to have extra copies here. I mean, they can pick them up if you guys don't mind. Okay, I got a set right here.
Okay. Last question. I think someone was mentioning a retaining wall in this area right down here. How long of a, what would be the length of the retaining wall? And what is that going to be made out of? Is that cement, stone, a stone wall?
Typically, it's a unitary block wall, a landscape wall, another
E.P. Henry.
E.P. Henry, Keystone, think of the different manufacturers, but it's a block wall with a manufactured finish to it that look like stone.
Mm-hmm. Is there any township requirement that retaining walls be of real material, stone, not EP Henry.
It depends on the structure, but the township's concern is the structural stability of the wall, not how it's made or what it's
Yeah.
made of.
My concern as a neighbor is aesthetics, and I know EP Henry doesn't age well.
Again, we don't regulate aesthetics. We don't have that authority. A retaining wall over 48 inches would require a permit because there's elements for structural stability of it. So we're looking at, does it work, not what it looks like.
And I know my experience with the Darby Road property, I attended all the meetings here, and there was a lot of discussion about shade trees and about maintaining them. I find it personally ironic that all those trees were taken down. Even though there was discussion here about what trees would maintain, Meg raised several questions. I would say 90% of those trees were completely cut down. So we had a discussion here about maintaining existing trees and mature trees. And as Meg mentioned, this property has some incredible specimens up on the plateau area. I just want to caution the Planning Commission that I know there was a lot of discussion about maintaining these shade trees on Darby Road, the 2 lots, and they were completely cut down.
So anything that was cut down because it's a pending land development would need to be considered for tree replacement. So unfortunately, if they've already been removed, then we can't stop them. It's already been done, but that isn't calculated in the tree replacement calculations. So that just means that those trees will need to be replaced. So unfortunately, yes, it'll be many years until we get to see the true value of those trees as they mature. So a bunch of little trees doesn't have the same canopy impact as larger trees, but it is accounted for at the very least in the replacement of those trees that were removed.
So I guess what I hear you saying is even though there was an agreement on existing shade trees being maintained and those were all chopped down, that there is really no fallout for the developer to take these trees down, even though they present to you in a planning commission that they're going to maintain them.
They didn't make any mention that they are maintaining them, no.
I was at the meetings and they talked about shade trees, and I know some of the members here specifically mentioned some species of trees that were there that were going to be maintained, and those are all gone.
For this property?
For Darby Road.
Oh, well, this is a different property. Sorry.
I think most of this discussion was about not our property.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
saying, on a previous
Right.
development,
Okay.
there was, and I was at every meeting here, the commission asked the developer about the shade trees existing on the property and specifically asked if they were going to be kept vital. And the answer was yes. And what actually happened was they were all taken down. And my question is there any follow-up on the part of the Planning Commission when someone misrepresents something like that? Because it has a big effect on the aesthetics of the area when you're going to maintain trees or if you're going to completely chop them all down.
Right. Angela, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, a lot of times what'll happen is the developer will come in and he'll say, I want to save this tree, and then he'll get an arborist to go out and say, oh, it's diseased or decayed, it's not going to last more than 5 years, so you might as well cut it down. So that's why sometimes trees that are indicated to be remain end up getting cut down, okay? The Planning Commission has no control on what happens after it leaves this body, okay? We recommend approval to the Township Commissioners, okay? And then anything after that, it's up to township staff to determine whether or not there's been a violation of an agreement that was made during the approval process. We don't comment on shade trees. We defer that to the Shade Tree Commission. We rely on them for their expertise. They know more about trees than any of us do, I think. So we have very little control over what happens to trees after it leaves this body.
The only reason I raised the issue is because attending the meetings, there was lengthy discussions about this issue. And I just found it a little ironic that there was an agreement that trees would be maintained intact, and yet that was not the case. And it appears that no matter what is said, it's really not enforceable. It doesn't sound like there's any negative side of someone going in and chopping all the trees down that they said they were going to maintain.
That would be the responsibility of the township staff, as Angelo said. So if that does happen after the plan is approved and something is changed, it's the responsibility of the township code enforcement to monitor that and then hold them accountable to any remediation that would be required under the ordinances of the township. That's not something that we're able to look at. We're a volunteer advisory body who looks at these plans and recommends for approval to the commissioners, as Angela was saying. So once it leaves this body with our recommendation, then we don't see it any further. We're not part of the implementation. We are not part of code enforcement. We don't do inspections. So we're not part of any of the after effects of the plans. We're just looking at it at the preliminary review stages.
So if the public has any concern about whether some requirement has been met, they can follow up with the township itself.
All right, thank you very
Also,
much.
I just want to think, we're also in the process of updating our regulations regarding land development, subdivision, and zoning. So maybe that's an area that we have to become a little more specific in as far as follow-up after the fact, so to speak.
Yeah, I just think if you maintain a certain position that you want to have shade trees, and there was a lot of discussion about that at the meetings, that there should be some kind of follow-through to make sure that what the developer presented actually is what they delivered, not only to the new homeowner, but to the neighborhood. And I find my experience with Darby Road is that did not happen.
Understood. Thank you for your comments.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lynn Cater. I live at 1030 Sproul Road across the street. I think it's great somebody's doing something with this property, just to say it's been vacant for 25 years. We've lived in our house and not maintained. It has looked terrible. So any improvement would be an improvement. But having said that, I have a couple of things that I'm just a little concerned with. One, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place to bring it up, but if you're bringing new water to the site, would the township be able to require that a hydrant be placed there? Because there's no fire hydrants at this end of the township.
So, can I just speak to that? Because we do have the fire chief looking at this plan. They have not provided a memo yet on this plan upon their review. But that is something that would be considered, and the Planning Commission just doesn't know that yet either. That's why I'm interjecting there. But it will be provided for this plan as well as others down the road.
You mean the plan will be provided to the fire department?
The review, I'm sorry, the review of the plan by the fire chief will be provided to the planning commission, and then it will be part of the discussion.
And are you suggesting that the fire department make a recommendation one way or the other?
The fire chief will take a look at whether or not a new fire hydrant needs to be located there. Yes.
Well, if I could just ask that you ask him to consider putting one there, because there is none. And we pay taxes, and we are the furthest place. All the fire halls are all on Brookline Boulevard. You know, instead of putting one down near us at the Creek, they're all within blocks of each other. So it would be helpful for us to have a fire hydrant. The second thing is I am curious, you know, the sewer systems in this area are combined, and what happens when Darby Creek floods, they backflow through the sewer lines into people's homes. We've taken action so they don't come into our home, but I think that's something that should be considered. You know, normally you would want to tie roof drains and things into the sewer system. In this case, I would maybe say that isn't a good idea. You know,
That's illegal.
You
okay.
You can't tie roof drains into a sanitary sewer.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
No, and that's not being proposed here.
Oh, okay. Okay, but when these percolating systems, they're eventually going into the storm lines, right? There isn't a separate system.
So
they all go into the same thing.
I don't believe that is there a storm sewer system in the street?
There is storm piping in Sproul Road along our frontage.
And where does that
Storm or
discharge?
sanitary?
Stormwater, there's no sanitary piping
Okay.
along this area.
It discharges into the creek. Yeah, do you know where the discharge point is?
It goes into the creek.
Yeah.
And
How
then all
far
the
down
creek
back
comes
up?
back into the sanitaries. So, I mean, it's
So-
kind of combined by default.
So, no, so in this case, there's an existing storm sewer pipe, right, in the street that discharges at some point down towards the creek. The sanitary line that they're proposing to install would not be combined with the storm sewer pipe. They will be two separate, distinct pipes. So if there is any sort of backflow from the storm sewer system, it will not impact the sanitary sewer system.
Okay.
And the stormwater facilities, the on-lot facilities, if they do fill up, they just drain overland, and then they would flow down either towards the back of the property or towards the front, and then that would be captured in the storm sewer system.
Okay. And then where is the new electric utility poles going to be placed? Do you know that yet?
So we will make application, as we get further along, we'll make application to PICO for that, and they will then locate where they don't have that.
Well, they'll probably be on the opposite side of Sproul, or will it be on your side?
They'll put a pole, if a new pole is needed, they'll put it on our side, tie it to wherever the grid is, and then locate if they need transformers, pad mount transformers on the property, or if they can do a pole mount. But PICO designs that. Work with that, and future date, we start to show that once we get engineering back from PICO.
All new utilities are supposed to be underground.
Okay. Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good. All right, that's the only thing. But if I could ask for that hydrant, it would be a positive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, was there anybody else who hasn't gone yet? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure, come in.
Right around here, there's big, beautiful tree. I'm sure the rest of us would agree. Very old, mature. Does this mean that tree is getting knocked down with this house? Or are you guys doing your best to keep it? It's roughly somewhere around here, but it's a massive tree.
It's in our best interest to keep it because it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely stunning.
Okay.
So we'll try our best because it'll only help us make it look beautiful and mature. It is a big tree. Yeah, it is massive.
I will note the landscape plans do not show it as being preserved. It does show as coming down, but we all appreciate a mature tree.
We would love to keep it if we could.
I would encourage you to do so. Great. Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? Sure thing.
This gentleman here said he had questions, answers for this gentleman here on the proposed project. Are we privy to any of those questions in the development of what is going to happen? Does that pertain to us?
They're primarily comments on the plan. There are engineering details more than anything.
Okay.
I mean, just to let you know where I'm coming from, I'm a civil engineer by trade, and these plans were presented as final plans. And there's a lot of information that we would normally expect to see on a final plans that weren't on these sheets. So I just wanted to make a note of those so that they didn't get missed. I'm sure eventually they would end up on here, but I just want to make sure, belts and suspenders type of thing.
Yeah, I'm new at this, so, thank you.
Thank you. Did anything trigger any follow-up by the planning commission members?
Yes.
Okay.
There was one question about the speed limit of the road and reducing it. Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong. Angelo, this is a PennDOT state route, so the township has no input on that?
It is a state highway that is up to PennDOT. The police have some level of input with accidents and speeding and such but ultimately it's up to PennDOT.
Usually PennDOT, before they'll change the speed limit, they'll ask you to do a speed study. Based upon the results of the speed study, they take the 85 percentile, I think. And whatever that speed limit is, then they would adjust it. My guess is if it's posted for 35, people are probably doing 45 through that area.
Any other comments down here? All set? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight, and we look forward to seeing revisions. So we'll see you at an upcoming Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for the neighbors to attend tonight. I appreciate all of your comments. All right, Planning Commission, we have one more thing on our agenda. We are looking to adopt the meeting minutes of December 12th, 2024. Is there anybody like to make a motion for the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes as presented.
Angelo made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Lou. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Kim abstains.
Which one? They're all the same.
Okay, seeing no other business before the Planning Commission, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
David moves, second.
Second.
Thank you, Lou. Meeting adjourned, 8:48. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.